Can you hear me? Yes? Loud and clear? Okay. We are going to get started. My name is Steven Earle. I'm here representing Gabriola Talks. Welcome to the Gabriola Fire and Protection Improvement District Board Trustee Election All Candidates meeting. That wasn't funny. I want to start by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Siouxland First Nation, and most of us live on that territory, and I am particularly grateful to be able to live on that territory. Just introduce Gabriola Talks for a second. This is a little bit from our vision statement. Gabriola Talks seeks to reflect the many different views and ideas that exist in this island community, and to strengthen the capacity of islanders to work together to address difficult issues by building understanding of one another's perspectives and wisdom. Thank you everybody for coming. We are not funded to hold this event, so if you have a loonie or a toonie in your pocket, could you drop it in the jar, if you haven't already done so, on your way out, so we can pay for the hall. And I want to start by thanking the candidates, all 6 of them. It's wonderful to have 6 candidates for running in this election. It is great to see this many people wanting to be out there doing community service. So thank you. A couple of people to introduce. Catherine Patterson here is the timer. She's also part of Gabriola Talks. And Taylor Martin in the middle there is the moderator. So I'm just going to quickly tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start with candidate introductions. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Catherine here has beautiful cards. Yellow means you've got 15 seconds left, and red, that's it. And so you have 2 minutes for your introductions. You have 2 minutes to answer each question. So that's the start, and then we will have 2 questions from the moderator. The candidates have been given the questions in advance. Again, they'll have 2 minutes each to answer, and then we'll take questions from the floor. If you wish to ask a question, please go to the back there and grab a piece of paper and write your name on it, and then we'll put all of those into a container box and pick them at random. So we'll go through all of the pieces in the box, and if we run out of pieces, we'll stop, and if we run out of time, we'll stop. We believe this is the fairest way to make sure that everybody may not have a chance to speak, but we hope you think it's fair. So if you have a question, go and write your name on a piece of paper, stick it in the box. We will draw the names randomly, and you will have 30 seconds to ask your question. So we're not looking for a speech. The question may be directed to all of the candidates or one of the candidates. But if you direct your question to one of the candidates, we will give the others an opportunity to speak as well. The 2-minute limit applies in all cases, and we'll continue until we're out of questions or out of time, and we intend to end at 8:30. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor to let the candidates speak for 2 minutes.
All right. In no particular order, I'm going to pass it this way and start with you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Everyone hear me okay? Okay, Sean Lewis. You don't need a pot of history, but very quickly, I came to Canada with a marine and hazardous materials background, ran the provincial fire school for 10 years and spent 22 years as an independent consultant and trainer, working with industry and fire service. I developed quite a liking for the fire service in that time, especially the volunteer fire service. And we have a fine fire department here in Gabriola. When I was working, I would sometimes have someone on my classes. And then when I retired, I thought, okay, I'd like to support the fire department. So I became a trustee. That's it in a nutshell. I've spent a lifetime. I'm a Canadian registered safety professional. I was a professional manager. I have a number of different qualifications. I've been a responder for chemicals. I presented the first hazmat courses in BC. I've written the Transport Canada textbook on chemical handling, and so on. I'm now retired, happy to say, but still involved with education and training in the marine field and a little bit in the fire service field. So I'm here to support our fire department. That's really it. Questions about my background, if relevant, I'd be happily answer in more detail. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, well done. We'll keep passing it this way.
Hi, I'm Bob Dixon. So the first thing I'd like to say is I'd like to really say thank you for all taking time to get out here. This is a small town, and choices like this are very, very important. So I admire that you've all come out to listen to us all. There's some people here from the fire group, and for the fire the apartment, could I have those that are in the group, just raise their hand? Fire department people? Okay, good. Okay, I think, first of all, these guys do a great job, and I think more than us possibly being trustees feel that, okay, then thank you. So I'd like to ask you all to clap your hands and thank them for all the work they do. I can talk about my credentials, okay, as a veterinarian, and veterinarian as passion. Yeah, that's why I stood up. Okay, I became a veterinarian because I stuttered, and pets were nicer than people. Okay, I was passionate about that. In 1996, I got Veterinary Practitioner of the Year from the American Animal Hospital Association. That's the highest award you can receive in North America as a veterinarian, and I was elected by my peers. I bring that up because you don't know my past and you don't know my passion. Being a veterinarian, doing the job correctly is the most important thing. I have now moved here, okay, and it will be my passion to serve you well and do a good job. I have tremendous board experience, ethics experience, human resource experience, and what I promise you is that I will be professional and unbiased, and I will do the very best I can to plan for the future for us all.
Thank you. That's not my timer. So does one of you guys have a timer? Okay, thanks.
Two tough acts to follow. My goodness. So I'm Doug. Sorry, I'm new at using the mic. So anyways, you said it is two tough acts to follow here. I'm Doug Saints from behind him now. Originally was from Calgary, when Calgary had a population of 175,000, so you can guess my age. So over the years, I've worked in Cochrane, Alberta as a cowboy and trained as a hockey player and athlete, play until that ended in a motor vehicle accident. During that time, I lived in places like Abbotsford, Vancouver, Victoria, Invermere, and now Gabriola Island. So when I did play in British Columbia, I fell in love with the climate, rain, the people, and the opportunity to experience nature. I visited very often until I could afford to purchase land here. So a little bit about me professionally is that I've had a 34-year career in real estate development and construction. I worked as a tradesperson, a general contractor, business owner, project manager, development manager, and ultimately a vice president. So I've worked for mom and pop shops, companies, national construction companies, and multi-billion-dollar real estate development firms. I come to this place with a lifetime of experience in boards, public engagement, dealing with municipalities, and having to make some tough decisions. I have a plethora of government skills that I bring. So I mean that's my career in a nutshell. But during the pandemic, I decided to shed that corporate skin and reinvent myself on Gabriola Island. It's a semi-retirement project. Initially lived in Vancouver, and then full-time on Gabriola. I'm a husband to my wife Ryan, and bachelor to grown boys Dean and James, and my French bulldog Walter. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We're going to just go down the line here.
How you guys doing? Doing all right? My name's Eric Johnson. I've been a resident of the island. Well, I've owned property here for 33 years. I've got ALR property down just off Taylor Bay. It's kind of half forested property. That's one of my interests in about fire here on the island. It really concerns me. Anyway, I was a construction guy for 55 years. I'm kind of semi-retired now in construction, a high-end trim carpenter, and I used to run a bunch of framing crews and things like that. So I'm kind of used to how the chain of command works. You know, that you don't get anything done if you don't have a chain of command. If you have people arguing all the time about who's in charge, nothing gets done. I guarantee you that. I don't want to be in the chain of command as a trustee. I don't think that's right. I really don't. They're two separate things. The fire follows one thing, trustees are in charge of the other thing. And they should work together in concert, but they're two different outfits. But I understand the dynamics of a bunch of guys working together, a bunch of people working together in general. I understand that dynamic and problems that happen and people's problems, interpersonal on job sites. I understand that completely. Yeah, some of you may know that I'm a musician also. So there's that. But the actual truth, because I've had this question before, how can you be a musician and have half a brain? The truth of the matter is that almost all the money I've ever made in my life has been as a carpenter. So, you know, I'm a weekend warrior. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. We're gonna keep going down that.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Moore, and I'm a long-term resident. I've been here 26 years. I live here with my wife and my 3-year-old son. This is my second term as a trustee is just coming to an end, so it'd be my 3rd term if I'm reelected by you fine people. After 6 years on the board, I've seen the tremendous job that our firefighters do. The amount of dedication and hard work they put in, keeping this island safe is above and beyond what I would expect from a volunteer department. So, you know, I want to give you guys a shout out for the amount of work you guys all do. And I just want to say that my primary focus on this department is fire safety. You know, the idea of a wildfire hitting this island would change this place to such an unbelievable degree that I just want to ensure that whatever happens, that doesn't happen. And the second thing that's important to me, of course, is fiscal responsibility. You know, everyone's tax dollars go into this department, and I want to make sure that money's spent appropriately. So, you know, for the last 2 terms, that's basically been my 2 focuses: fiscal responsibility and ensuring the fire department is running well. You know, I can't complain about either of those. They're doing a fantastic job on both parts of that. So, you know, hats off to you guys, and you know, if I'm elected for another term, I look forward to working with you for another 3 years.
Thank you, John. And finally to Diana.
Hey, I'll go. I grew up with 6 brothers. I had 3 sons. I have 12 nephews. I tell the kids at school, especially the boys, there's nothing you've done. I've seen it before. What are you expecting me to like faint or blush or fall over? Don't go for it. I'll wait. It's okay. So, you know, working with the fire department, it's like being back at home on the farm. It's awesome. I'm an Albertan. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. It's now BC. My name is Diana Moher. I'm a newbie on this island. We moved here in 1986. I cannot claim long time status yet. I haven't been told how long we have to be here until we get that status. Every time I get up there, somebody tells me I haven't quite made it because they've been here longer. So I'm waiting. We'll stay until that happens. I love this island. I have been a community volunteer in this island basically from about 4 years after we moved here. My kids were old enough to leave with babysitters that wouldn't come back the second time. So I started with the choir. I run the choir with Gail Lund for 35 years. I was fully expecting a piano in the corner and I'd be setting lights and we would be having a concert tonight, but here we are. But my focus is to continue to do the work that I was able to do with the fire department, with the incredible group of people that we have. And our mandate is to protect the island as a whole for the whole community, and to make sure that our fiscal responsibility is to provide the fire department with the money, the training, and the equipment that they need to continue doing that. And if I go back in for another 3 years, that will be the focus of what we will be doing within the budget.
Thank you for the overview, everyone. Now we're just going to ask 2 questions of each of the candidates. And if you'd like me to repeat it between turns, I'm happy to do that. The first question is, what skills and knowledge do you bring to the Board of Trustees? And I'm going to start with Doug.
Thank you. So what skills I bring to the Board of Trustees? First off, I alluded to governance. I've worked many corporations that had multiple shareholders or stakeholders, so a reporting structure was always very important and important to me to maintain that trust and confidentiality or confidence and transparency. With that, I also bring cost controls and cost monitoring. You can't manage a budget unless you're able to look at the line items and understand the cost to dates, the cost of completes, and being able to level the resources when necessary or take corrective action. The worst thing a budget can have is being underfunded or a line item being underfunded. Also bring conflict resolution to the table, procurement skills, RFP, RFQ, calls to tender, all the processes, procedures, documentation that go with it. Reporting and accountability, that's has been the focus of most of my career. And also being able to engage and tell the truth to folks. One thing that I want to bring up tonight is there's a false narrative that's going around. I'd like to bring that to a head. I'm not here to recommend replacement of the chief. I think Will has done a tremendous job. There's 2 reports out there that say the same. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise, other than there's a rumor and conjecture out there that that's my only agenda, and it's not. So I hope you take that as a genuine gesture. Will, I think you've done a fantastic job, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I'm going to go to Eric. Eric, what skills and knowledge do you bring to the Board of Trustees?
I'm not really a businessman, that's for sure. I've been a carpenter, as I said, for a long time. I worked with probably 1,000 different tradesmen and tradeswomen. So I'm pretty good at talking to people, but I don't think that being a trustee is about that. I think being a trustee is about listening to people who know what they're talking about and going over line items of budget so that you have a safe fire department, but it's not out of control spending. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that we can't do that, but at the same time we can't nickel and dime the fire department. This is the best fire department I have ever seen. I've lived and been in a lot of different places, and I have friends on volunteer fire departments all over the place. This is the best one that I've ever seen. And until quite recently, I didn't even have to think about it. I didn't have to think about any kind of problems. And the problems that this fire department has right now is not of their own making, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of what skill I would bring, I think I can see through the BS here and just sit there and be part of a 7-person board making decisions that are best for this island and the safety of this island. So that's the deal.
Thank you, Eric. I'll go to Sean next.
This is
skills and knowledge do you bring to the board?
Yes, I told you some of them already, how I've been Canadian half my life, and I'm proud to say that I've had a very interesting work life here. And the skills and knowledge I've developed through working across the country, not just in BC, but Toronto Fire, Halifax, Vancouver, Victoria, and just pretty much every small coastal fire department, which is where I kind of fell in love with the volunteer fire service. Mixing with different people, doing investigations, work safe, little this, little that. Variety gives you experience, and mixing with different people, going into small communities, getting an idea of how people think. Somebody makes a joke here. We came to Gabriola, we bought here in 07, and people make a joke about, well, how long are you going to be here before you're fully accepted? We lived in a small village in Ireland where the families had been there for centuries. Trust me, it took a long, long, long time to be accepted. You probably have to be 200 years old. Anyway, skills. I have experience in personnel management, as it was then called, now human resources. I've experience in safety practices. I've experienced in training. I have been a responder for real, not as much as our volunteers, but for real. And when I ran the fire school, I got a lot of hands-on experience with fire, enough to make me respect it. The primary objective of the board is the fire safety on the island. Right? And I am passionate to and committed to that idea. And the best work we do is sometimes not noticed. I'll say that Chief Will and I have had some small good news stories, which I'm not going to repeat. It's all good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to go to Diana next. Diana, what skills and knowledge do you bring to the Board of Trustees?
I'll say age. I'm have a background. My education in Alberta was in psychology and sociology. It was something that people said, "Oh, if you can't do anything, you did that." And I said, "It's an amazing degree that I've used over and over and over again." I'm a people watcher. It's helped in many occasions. It's allowed me to figure out where things might be going. I've worked in the medical field in both Alberta and in BC. I've worked in the legal field in Alberta for 12 years. I've worked now in the education field for 31 years as a special education assistant. I have a background in emergency management training, when we used to call it PEP, Provincial Emergency Program. We started the first one here. I have search and rescue training. We had a search and rescue team on Gabriola, and I was part of the initial training program person here. I have had a first aid ticket probably for 30 years now. I maintain that. I take as many programs as I can, either through the fire hall, through the school, or through the emergency management programs when they bring them up, including any mental health programs that come. Because that's also on my mind when I'm looking at our first responders, is making sure that their mental health is taken into account. So all of those experiences together, when I sit at the board, brings to my feeling is a rounded person that allows me to look at everything that I can do. Apparently at school, I'm really good at math. So I know that I can work around the budgets that we're looking at, and that I can handle looking at whether we're forecasting our budgets fast enough and looking at the numbers that are coming in. So a budget does not scare me. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And John, what skills and knowledge do you bring to the Board of Trustees?
Well, I can read and write. That's something. Forget to take that off. I have a business background. I actually founded a company that did pretty good. I was the president for 7 years, and I ended up selling it 3 years ago. So I have a strong business background, and I actually have a degree in computer science as well. And I've been working over the last little while to sort of modernize the way that the fire department trustees do their email and the way the file systems work for the department files. And I actually managed to get a grant from Microsoft to allow us to do all that for free. So, you know, if I'm reelected, I'll be able to continue using those skills. And I've also been a trustee for 6 years too. So I know a few things about the regulations and the bylaws. And yeah, so I mean, that's basically what I bring to the board. I know quite a few of the members of the department now. I have a very good idea of how to put out a fire. You know, you throw the water at the bottom, not the top, all that stuff. So I've been learning. Sorry, I wish I had more to say here. I guess my skills are lacking. But thanks for listening.
Thank you, John, and over to Bob. Bob, what skills and knowledge do you bring to the board?
I have been successful in the past, and passionate. Multiple boards. I've been in charge of the ethics group. I've got a background in human resources. Most important thing, I do my homework. I do my homework well. I have attended almost every board meeting for the past year that the trustees have. I've tried to understand what was right and wrong there. In August, I passed out Robert's Rules of Order to the board because I felt that the dialogue was unprofessional and at times the board could have run more smoothly and efficiently. I'm a really good outside the box guy. I believe that if everybody's thinking the same, nobody's thinking. I really believe that. And I believe outside input is important, and I have to think about it. What's my goal? What's my goal? Why am I doing this? I mean, I'm nuts doing this. I'm busy. My goal is to make the fire board trustees as professional as our fire department, so we can leave and they'll be proud of us, we are proud of them. I think I've got the skills, and I will do my homework every single time.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, the second question to the candidates is, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board? And Bob, I'm going to go right back to you.
Oh, that was short. My heart rate hasn't even come down yet. What do you see as the most pressing issue facing the board? Most pressing issue is for the board, I think, to lead the fire department, be able to satisfy their needs in the future. If we had a big fire here, it would devastate us all. Devastate us all. I do have a concern about the amount of hazardous material that goes up here. We have no place to take it. We have no place to take it. I agree with the burning regs as long as we can get rid of material. But if we can't get rid of material, a power line, a bottle acting as a magnifying glass and pile of wood or brush, we're going to have a huge fire. I think we need to basically be defensive, but we also need to be try to prevent the future. And I think we need to have a burn section. It's really, really important. And everybody needs to be able to get rid of the material that they have, either by their own burns or take it there. Because if not, we're going to set ourselves up for a huge, huge problem. Life is not a dress rehearsal. We got one shot. I think I can help with that. I think I can think outside the box. I think when people say no, we just haven't taken time to really investigate the options. And that's what we're doing.
I'm gonna go back over here to you, John. What do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board right now?
Well, to be honest with you, I think the communication that the board has done over the last couple of years has been a little lacking. We just finished rewriting the burning bylaw 95, now 102. And just that process really opened my eyes to the amount of confusion that is out there in the community about what's actually allowed and what isn't. For example, people are actually allowed to burn material in their yard now. You do have to call the fire department to get a permit, but you are allowed to burn material in your yard now up to a certain size, and the pile might get inspected. And there's rules that you have to follow, but that's part of being on a small island that has a lot of people and a lot of fire hazards. So, the most pressing issues, well, there's a lot of them, but I'd say communication is a big part of this. Everybody has a vested interest in keeping this island safe. I'm sure nobody here wants to see a wildfire get going this August. So I think it's really important for us as a board to keep the public aware of what causes a fire, aware of the things they're allowed to do, and very clear on what things are not allowed during high season. And that was quite an eye-opener. We did a couple of town halls. When we were passing the bylaw 95, we did a couple of town hall meetings where the public came out and had a chance to do a Q&A with the board about the bylaw. And I was surprised at the level of confusion. So, if I'm reelected, that's something that I'm going to push for more of, is just more public engagement and more notifications about upcoming changes and the things that you're currently allowed to do.
Thank you, John. Diana, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board?
Well, thanks, John. I was going to say something along the same lines, because those two town halls were really interesting. But it also leads us to the next thing that faces the trustees all the time, which is their budget, which leads us to the increasing training and equipment that the fire hall requires in order to keep up with the requisitions that come in for what they need to keep up with regulations that happen over and over and over again. So what we're looking at is increasing training requisitions and the requirements that came in from the report that we got from Jay Bromley, and looking at what they're looking at, which may be increasing staffing. So we're looking at where our budgets are going to go on those lines. We also need to look at the structure of the board and how things have been working. And we keep hearing things from different people. Interestingly enough, when I came on to do a 7-month stint to finish off with somebody, it was pretty calm and pretty even and pretty focused. We had 7 months, we did things, we had committee meetings, we fought sometimes in committee meetings and got through all of those stuff, and then we came to a board meeting and presented what we did there. And then there was a shift and a change as stuff happened. I'm hoping that we can make ourselves work our way back to that format and find that way of communicating in a way that is healthy and cooperative, because we are supposed to be working in a manner in which we are one board working together and voting independently, but working together, because that's what we are, is we are definitely one board and not 7 different people with 7 different groups of people on the island. We're here together, and I think the board can do that.
Thank you, Diana. And I will go to Sean next. Sean, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board?
Thank you. I've been a trustee for 6 years, and I've seen many good things, and I've seen things that have puzzled me. And I realize a lot of it has changed. There's been a lot of change in the world, on the island. The demographics are changing. There's more people moving here. our requirements are changing. What was acceptable, if I say this was acceptable 20 years ago, whatever it might be, a way of working, but we need this now, that doesn't mean that people were doing something wrong 20 years ago. It's just that more and more we have to say what we do what we say, and document it, right? Everything has to have a loop. So I'd agree with the colleagues here that communications is important. Remember, the board established the fire department, but the board will be pointless without the fire department. And we are to exercise oversight and governance to ensure the community gets value for our tax money. And we are getting great value. That is not a worry for me. But I think over time, entrenched attitudes and confusions. Let me address one. I don't know any trustee who wants to direct operations. It's well done by better qualified people, right? However, part of oversight and governance is knowing that the right things will be done at the right time. And that is a duty that we have to the community. And I think communications could be much better. When in November 21, a majority of the board wanted a review, we were met with all sorts of disagreement, and there was a meeting and more disagreements. Thank you. But now we've had a review, and the review said our fire department is good. And by the way, here's ways to get better. And we had a review, and the board is also working to get better. So that's it. We keep moving on.
Thank you. Eric, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board?
Can I sit for this? I'm not being rude if I sit for this. I think the most pressing issue that I see or I hear about, because I'm not a board member, so I'm looking at this as all of you are looking at it. It is a constant harassment that goes on of the fire chief and the training officer, quite truthfully. And it extends right down to office staff. That's my problem. Really. That's why I'm here, because I'm not paying for that kind of nonsense anymore. Okay, as a taxpayer, and I don't think any of us should. There has to be a clear chain of command, and the board doesn't come up from the chain of command. They help and support the fire department, but they're not part of the chain of command. And there's been a heavy mission creep here, and it needs to stop. One of the things that is most important, I think, of hearing this is communication. I think if we had better communication, a lot of this wouldn't happen. For one thing, all of you would know that this is going on, and also there'd be less of this feeling that the board's not listening or the fire hall's not listening to your concerns. Honestly, at some point, you got to say these are experts. The fire chief is an expert, very well trained. The training officer is very well trained. The volunteers are very well trained. It's probably the best trained outfit that you're going to run into anywhere. So second guessing these people is just beyond the pale, and it's going to get dangerous, and it already is dangerous as far as I'm concerned. And that's my concern as a landowner here on this island, and as someone who has 2.5 acres, I guess, of heavy bush, 32 inch caliber Douglas fir. I'm not having it. Okay, so that's what I got to say.
Thank you, Eric. And to Doug, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing the board?
Well said, all candidates. Happy to be here with you to share this. The most pressing issue that I have seen is there needs to be a delineation between the board and the fire department, and without that, I think there's a risk that the services diminish or worse. So there's 2 reports out there. There's the advisory select committee report that was done by a group chaired by Howard Booley, and then there's the report that came out just recently by Jay Brownlee and Associates. Both reports have indicated that the board needs to delineate, decouple, and stop commingling with the fire department. The fire department and operations are doing a fantastic job. There's no doubt about that. The fiscal responsibility is the responsibility of the board. Advisory is the responsibility of the board. And staying out of the operations is also the responsibility and accountability of the board. Without that, again, we run the risk of diminishing the service that we desperately need here. There's a quote that's in the advisory select committee. It says, relations amongst board members, employees, firefighters, and members of the public are not effective and need to be improved. So I think the pressing issue here is the board needs to improve how it operates and functions. The board needs to give the proper chain of command to the chief. The board needs to get out of trying to fight fires and actually be an employer and advisory committee for the fire department. That's what I've seen, and that's what I've recognized and read in the various materials that are available to all of us. That's all.
Thank you, everybody. That was very informative for me, that's for sure. Steve is going to pick a name now and invite someone up, and you can have 30 seconds to ask. Oh, I'm going to pick a name. Okay. Here it is. Tim Shill Jackson, please can you come up in 30 seconds only for a question. We will cut you off after 30 seconds. Thank you so much.
I am wondering if there is any perceivable conflict of interest, financial or otherwise, for any of the people who are running on the board. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you, but I would also like to know what kind of human relations responsibilities the board has as far as protecting members of the fire department from public assaults. Are you asking?
Okay, I'm just going to offer in no specific order. If anyone would like to address this, Eric, I'm going to go to you first. Do you want to address this question? You can pass.
Can you run that by me?
She asked, is there a conflict of interest with anyone on the board? Yeah, we'll start with conflict of interest. Thank you. Is there a perceived conflict of interest here?
Well, we need to ask that of everybody that's here. Okay, I don't have a conflict of interest. I'm nothing that if I sit on the board and we're talking about bylaws, it doesn't affect my bottom line because I've got a bottom line. Okay. And I don't have anybody working for me. So that's on the board. So that doesn't affect my bottom line either. So we really have to think about some conflict of interest. It doesn't matter whether you're for the fire chief or against the fire chief. A conflict of interest is a conflict of interest. What was the second question?
Well, let's stick with that for now.
I'll answer it.
We'll stick with one. We'll stick with one for now. Thank you. We'll stick with one for now. Thank you. Sean, would you like to respond to this question? The conflict of interest?
I can respond to that simply enough. I'm retired. I have no financial interests or investments in anyone. I have no real estate interests. I have no work interests. I have no conflict of interest that I can imagine that would in any way affect me as a trustee. Right? So that, and
That's fine. Thank you. Doug, would you like to answer this question?
Thank you. I have no conflict of interest. The only interest I have is I'm a property owner of a heavily wooded property. And it does concern me how much unburned fuels are on it. I've been working diligently to try to get rid of it for the benefit of my neighbors and the community in general. I know nobody personally on the fire department, and I think that's a good thing. I'm going to come here with a set of fresh eyes and a fresh perspective. I don't have any kind of allegiance or favoritism or friend on the board or the fire department that would sway or bias my opinion. I think that's important to maintain that wall, that separation. Otherwise, I mean, even if you get to an arm's length relationship, there is always a problem there. And once that's identified, you must recuse yourself. And That's another thing I believe in. Anytime that there is conflict of interest, a perceived conflict of interest that requires your decision or vote, you must recuse. And that's what I believe in.
Thank you. We'll stay here with Bob on the conflict of interest question.
Conflict of interest. I am a contractor. And we do a lot of different things here. I have always tried and will always do exactly what fire chief requested me as far as the projects and the amount of equipment and things I need there. That will be at his direction. As far as any conflict of interest on the board, if there's anything that I perceive financial or personal or anything else that we question, I would immediately not do that. I was chairman of the ethics group at my high school, and also for the local or for the state association. So I understand conflict of interest very, very well. If there's ever a question before it's asked, I wouldn't do.
Thank you, Bob. We will now go to John. Would you like to address this question, conflict of interest?
Thank you. Yes. I don't have any. I don't have any financial interest in anything that the fire department does, so there's no conflict of interest there. But I will address. There's been some people, one individual in particular, who repeats with eye-watering regularity that I knew some of the firefighters, namely the chief, before being a member of the board. And the suggestion is that I somehow, I don't know what, defend him. I'm not sure what. The whole notion of a board trustee that doesn't want to know that members of the department is mind-blowing to me. But regardless, I've been accused endlessly by this individual of having a conflict of interest. And so I just want to tell everybody right here, right now, I don't have a conflict of interest. If I feel like my integrity is in jeopardy, I will recuse myself. This has not come up. I mean, there was the hiring process, but there was a committee. We went through a process there. That was 3.5 years ago. If someone wants to revisit that, look at the chief's performance. Stop attacking the process and look at his performance. You got 3.5 years of performance to look at now. I'm confident we made the right decision. I'm tired of this conflict of interest accusation being leveled at me all the time. I'm doing this for the community as a volunteer. I'm not doing it for anyone else. Okay, this is for me. So that's that.
Thank you, John. Diana, would you like the opportunity to respond to this question?
I can't say that I can't thank you very much for asking this one, because I see this come up over and over and over again. A board is entrusted by electors to govern in the best interest of the community, and it can only do this as a collective. Individual members cannot independently govern or make decisions affecting their community. The conflict of knowing somebody in the community, I read about myself, but apparently I knew Will as a kid. So I've been working in the education field for 31 years. That one, I did not have to do that one. Which I'm sure now that he's as red-faced as, whatever. But I have worked for 31 years in the education field. Even if I only take into account a small school population, that's about 150 students a year for 31 years. That means I have come into contact and connected and impacted over 4,762 students in that time. So I loved every one of the students that I came into contact with. Sorry, Will, if you want to get red, go ahead and get red. And I love boys, I love the girls, I love whatever I get approached to and with and who I work with. And I will treat them all the same and all with the same respect. And they come to me even now. And if that's a conflict of interest, then I don't know what we're all doing here, because it does not impact my ability to sit on a board and make decisions for the health and welfare of the community that you're all sitting in, because it doesn't impact me financially in any way. So.
Thank you. In the interest of having as many voices heard as possible, we'll move on. And if we have time, we'll come back to your second question, Tim Joe. Thank you. Jonathan Carlson has a question. 30 seconds for the question, please. Thank you.
So quickly, thanks everyone who's here and everyone who's here. And I've only been here since '99, so I'm behind you. I'm behind you. I'm just, the things that I'm hearing, and I live and work on Gabriola, raised my family to the point of them leaving. So I'm around. I know a lot of you, recognize most of you. And there's things that are essential. There's things that are essential that the fire department and the board has to do. And there's things that are nice. What's essential? What's essential? And what would just be nice, but not necessary for what you do.
Okay. You might want a second to think about that one. I do. What's essential? I'm not answering it. I'm going to go to Bob first. Bob, would you like to address this question? What's essential and what's nice?
Thanks for an easy question, Jimmy. What's nice? That comes back to budget. Comes back to what the fire department needs now and 10 years from now. We have to be very careful that we separate the wish list from the needs list. And I think that's what your question is. Can we separate the wish list from the needs list? It's the second highest thing we pay out of taxes. So what are the needs? The needs are fire prevention and also enough equipment that we can fail safe things if there's a problem. Sometimes the new trucks aren't the best trucks. Sometimes we need to think outside the box and we need to have more water in certain places. So, you know, what our needs are good equipment. Our needs are paying our volunteers well because they're the ones with their lives in the line. We need to make sure they're trained correctly. The wish list, fancy uniforms are fine, but, you know, it's all about giving people the things they need.
Thank you, Bob. Diana, would you like to answer what's essential versus what's nice?
I think that's a really hard question. Thanks, John. Because what I think might be a wish might be to them essential. And I think my job is to make sure that I have enough background knowledge to understand whether or not they know that that is essential. And one of the things Jay Brownlee said is, if you're doing proper forecasting and looking ahead as to what you need as things move forward and change within your dynamic environment, and you are prepared for those changes, and therefore you can buy and purchase and look for things and take into account things that we're having problems now, which is like your what do they call that? Your chain, your buying chain, where things are taking time. Supply chains, thank you. So that we're aware of the costs of these things that are coming, and we're not caught flat-footed like Nanaimo was when they went to buy a truck. And it took them so long that it went from 1 point something million to 1.6 million. So we need to understand the difference between what we think is a wish and what our fire department knows is an expectation and that they know that they might need it in 5 years, and we need to start looking ahead as to how we're going to buy that, and not just by using the contingency fund, but looking at whether or not we have to change the way that we look at our purchase programs. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Eric, would you like to respond to what's essential versus what's nice?
I've been looking at what's essential and what is a wish list too. As a taxpayer, I don't want to pay any more taxes, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of the requirements, and there are requirements to the fire department, are governed by outside forces. This isn't something where we get to decide as a board or as a fire department on what equipment we buy or when we turn it over. It has the insurance companies run the place. In order to keep your insurance low on this island, and it's quite low, the insurance companies require certain things of volunteer fire department in particular. So that means they have got to buy trucks at a particular, the price is negotiable, but it has to be a particular truck and it has to be kept up with. And they have a life expectancy. And, so I think the thing to do is leave it up to the fire chief and his staff. I mean, you're not trying to screw somebody to the wall with this stuff. The board, I think, can step in and say, well, that's a bit excessive, when it's excessive, but the people on the board have to know what's excessive. But they can't just say, oh, we're not doing that, because if you don't have the proper equipment, the insurance company steps in and says, okay, that's fine and dandy, then you go down, your rating goes down, and your insurance for everybody here, everybody in this island, their insurance goes up. So that's what's driving it. So, do you want to argue with me from here? We're not going to do that. You want to ask a question? Ask a question.
Thank you for responding. Doug, would you like an opportunity to respond to what's essential versus what's nice?
So what's essential to what's nice? I mean, the fire department, they can easily tell us what their requirements are. Training is essential. I think the report has suggested that the deputy fire chief is essential to maintain the services and maintain the levels of services that we expect. I mean, those are things that I would look at as an essential service. The apparatus, the equipment, I think those are on depreciation schedules or some kind of replacement schedule. So that, I think that's taking care of itself. What would be nice to have are things that would be on the wish list. I don't see any 9 or 6-story buildings on this island, so having an aerial truck that would reach that high is probably something we don't require. That's a wish list, kind of item, but completely unnecessary. I think the training, the inclusion of a new position, and the upkeep of the equipment is the essential meat and nuts and bolts of the department, and to continue to maintain the service for this item. That's the way I see it.
Thank you so much. And Sean would like an opportunity to express what is essential and what is nice.
Thank you. On some level, everything is essential. How do we prevent emergencies? You might engineer a solution, you might have a procedural solution or a reactive one. Quick example, if there's a hazard such as a propane tank and you don't want people driving into it, issuing memos is not the best way to go about it. A concrete barrier works fine. If you educate people that they don't leave the house with a candle lighting, you will have less fires. This has been proven because the causes of fire are always the same. And finally, reactive. This is where the fire truck turns up. Yeah, there's the fire truck. The fire truck turns up and well-trained people respond to put out the fire. That is also wonderful and essential, but it's the most costly way of doing things. So what are we doing here? Pre-incident planning is a major job for any fire department. And we have a fire education. We have a Fire Smart program. These are the quiet programs that actually bear fruit down the road, but you never notice because you don't have the fire. So the person who at school learns something, and a few years later remembers to close the kitchen door and check the stove before going to bed. Or the person who doesn't leave a candle, or the person that doesn't exceed the burn regulations and light up too much and then say, OMG, what do I do now? Right? This is the real value down the road, because the stats are, as people apply these, the number of house fires goes down. The real essential, and the one that I'm most proud of here, is that if I call 911, and I have done, people will come to help, right? Now, it's not always perfect, it's not always as timely as we'd like, but people will come to help. That's the one essential. And the rest we could argue about, but I really think that the programs I see here are going to bear fruit down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And over to John, what's essential in what's not?
As a trustee, what is essential is, of course, the budgeting is the most important part. Do you ever stop and think how we pay for a fire truck that costs $1 million when the whole budget is under that? It's because we have a long-range plan, and that money has been set aside over a period of time because we know when that existing fire truck is going to expire and when we have to buy a new one. That also applies to the buildings and some of the other major equipment. So our long-range plan was written by Albert Reed and has expired years ago. We don't currently have a long-range plan. That is essential to keeping this department good. Our fire chief has been very on top of this and has managed to keep the schedule going for our truck replacement and our equipment replacement. But that is one of the essentials that we need to do. Is we need a new long-range plan. Albert Reed's not here with us, unfortunately, but you know, we're going to have to find a way to make this happen on our own. So, you know, that's something I think is essential. Well, it is essential. It's not an optional thing. We need a long-range plan. It's essential. What's nice to have? It'd be nice if all the trustees got along all the time.
Most likely.
We get done anyways. What else is essential? Well, just making sure that everyone's, that the departments are fully staffed. It's essentially just getting the reports from the training officer, the fire chief, and the staff. That's the essential stuff. Getting the reports, gauging whether or not they're doing their job effectively, and making sure that the department's running smoothly. That's, as a job, as a trustee, those are the essential things. Thank you.
The lucky winner is Wendy Schultz. Please ask one question and keep it to 30 seconds. Thank you, Wendy.
I want to ask if it's possible to, I can't vote on Wednesday. Oh, do you need me? Okay, I can't vote on Wednesday, and I understand there's no way to do that. Is that on the, like, when people are not, is that on the slate at any point in time? Can I get a proxy?
Not currently, no.
No.
Sorry. It's on the radar.
Yes.
Okay. So if you can't make it on the 19th.
Yeah, I work in Victoria sometimes. And I know there's other people too.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Thank you for the question, Wendy. I feel like the people up here are hearing that question. Next, we will go to Liz Sealsa. One question, 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay, I'm Liz Sealsa, and I'm a 40-year settler on Gabriola Island. I only say that not for a sense of entitlement, because I love this island. So I'm going to direct my question to Doug. So I don't know him yet. I know most of the other people on the board. So after the commendable operation and review of our fire department and the general history of outstanding service, what would you do if you're elected as a board member and you have a relationship to Dr. Rooks? What would you do to, or what do you want to change about the board? I do go to the fire department meetings. I miss very few of the board meetings over the past, so I see what goes on. So I'd like to know what you do as a new member would do. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. I will let Doug answer that question first, but if anyone else wants to, they can also chime in.
Well, if elected, I think it's essential as a new member to try to implement or at least advocate some of the recommendations that were made by the J. Bromley report and the advisory select committee that was available last fall. I mean, those things seem to be very relevant to this board, very relevant to the fire department, and decoupling the two bodies is essential to make sure that the appropriate support is for the fire department. I've read too many emails, too many reports to think otherwise, to think that it is running as efficiently as it can. So if elected, I mean, I would advocate to try to make the board run as effectively as it possibly can. And again, it's to improve the services on this island, which again are essential to me as a property.
The question was, in considering the review that was done, what would you do? What would you want to change? And she was directing it at Doug because she said she doesn't know Doug as well as maybe some of the other members. But Eric, if you would like to respond to that, you're welcome to pass, as it was directed at Doug.
You want to hear my opinion?
I thought we talking about the Brownlee report. Is that the one we're talking about? We are talking about the Brownlee report.
The Brownlee, no, I was asking a question. I go to the meetings, I see what goes on, I hear all the chatter in the audience. So I want to see a better working board. That's why I asked the question. So that's why I asked the question.
Well, I guess you're going to change your trustees, aren't you? At least one, you know, so that's what I'm saying.
Diana, would you like a chance to respond to this question?
I think Liz knows me well enough to know, sorry.
I'm not used to that. Directed to Doug?
Yes, but everyone has a chance to respond if they like.
Okay. There are two reports out there. There's some things that are recommended in them. I don't know why people haven't recognized that we have started to implement them. I have copies here that are marked with stuff that have been done, things that we have implemented. Some things were implemented and passed last year in the summer. Those recommendations sometimes are not followed by certain people, and then confusion ensues because then we have to go back and remind people that we have policies with those recommendations embedded in them. The Brownlee report reflects some of those changes as well, and we are moving forward on all of those recommendations as quickly as we possibly can. So change, as we all know, comes as fast as people are able to make them happen. And then what we have to do is put them together and put them into policies, and then make sure that the policies are understood and that we move forward with them. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, Liz asked the question specifically to Doug because she doesn't know Doug, but there's probably people in the audience that don't know the other members as well. So giving them a chance to respond to the same question, I feel is only fair. John, would you like to respond to this question?
I'll keep it quick so that everyone else has a chance to ask questions too. I think you're really asking like what would be done to fix the problems on the board and the discord between the members. And I think honestly, if everyone just takes a deep breath and tries to calm the meeting and not say mean things to each other, I think the problems will go away, but that's probably just wishful thinking. I do think that some changes are maybe necessary. So maybe it's me, hopefully not, but we'll see.
Thank you, John. Can we respond to this question?
Well, John and I are the two longest serving trustees. And over again, I hear people saying things like toxic culture, et cetera. Some behavior is not acceptable. I can only answer for myself. I always try to behave properly. We don't have to agree or like each other, but we can have a better standard of behavior. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, could I ask you to repeat the question one more time, please?
It's basically, what would you do to change what's going on in the board right now?
Everybody needs to behave in fairness. I think what I would start with, the Gate Fire Department harassment and discrimination policy and procedures was written in 1998. That's 25 years ago since we had an upgrade on human resources, on harassment protocols. The only thing, okay, and I doubt that the trustees have even seen this. I know 3 of the trustees have never seen this. The only thing that is out there is a 3-page one right now, and the last page is for your name and the location and the date of the harassment. We have no current human resource document in place that talks about harassment, bullying, or anything else. The trustees have to be held at exactly the same level as the volunteers do. We have no means to control either one right now, unless we use the 68 one, which is out of date. And the first thing that needs to be done is we need to bring a policy forward that is both for the volunteers, the officers, and the trustees, so everybody plays nice. Everybody is woke. Everybody is cordial, and everybody gets along.
I'd just like to thank Glennis for updating that guideline. Just been updated.
Okay, so I think it looks like we have time for one more question. I'm going to go to Francois Bosman, please. 30 seconds, one question. Thank you.
I'll try and get this done in 30 seconds. I'm Francois Bosman. I've been. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Francois Bosman. I've been a doctor on the island here for the last 16 years now. And my concern is that there's been a steady erosion of the relationship between the fire hall, the BC ambulance service, and the medical clinic over the past 3 years. I submitted a letter of concern to the board and the chief regarding a senior member of the department's unprofessional and bullying behavior and compromising patients' confidentiality and potentially damaging the college reputation. Does the board have policies that set standards and oversight to ensure that the organization can discharge its fiduciary responsibilities? To date, the only member that has responded to me has been Sean Lewis.
Francois, I just want to recap your question just for clarity. Your question is, does the board have policies that set standards and oversight for bullying and human relations? So that's good, because that brings it back to our first question that we didn't get around to answer. Does the board, are there policies that set standards and oversight for bullying and human relations? Oh, I just timed myself with Eric. I'd like to go to you first.
Yeah, bullying is not a real good thing, and I can imagine that some members of the fire department have put up with a fair amount of bullying the last little while. What we do about it, I don't know. It goes on and it goes on. I don't like it. I don't know how you stop it. I think that one of the things we could do is when there are public meetings, if you have basically if you have a concern for the fire board, you say it to the chair. And I think that would be the most important thing, that we be real nice at meetings and we don't yell stuff out and we don't parade around and make a scene at fire board meetings, no matter how important you think your point is. I'm not aware of bullying within the organization. I don't know. I have not heard of any personally. I'm not anything about anybody bullying within the volunteer bunch. So, but I think, but I have seen a fair amount of bullying online, in line, at the meetings, and I would like that to stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Sean, would you like to respond? We're talking about human relations and policies that set standards and oversight.
Yes, I can't speak to the fire department, but I've seen bullying on the board between trustees, unresolved issues, in my opinion, quite unacceptable. But there's a perception, rightly or wrongly, that some complaints are pursued and other complaints are not. I think that we should have a clear, open policy. Any complaint coming in should be copied to the board, and if it's the chief's area, let the chief deal with it. End of story. But at least let us know what is happening, right? We can work better like that.
Thank you, Sean. John, would you like to respond to this question?
Sorry. So I think there's two things going on in that question. Bullying harassment policy, there's two parts. There's the fire department and there's the trustees. The fire department has a policy on that. And if something is complained about, there's an investigation and there's potential consequences. That's operations. And as we've talked about earlier tonight, operations and the board are separate. It goes through the chief. It's up to the chief to deal with those things. Now, if you're talking about bullying and harassment on the board itself, we don't have a bullying and harassment policy specifically for the board. The thing about bullying and harassment policies is like you've got to have some sort of a consequence, but we are all elected officials and there's no consequences for doing something. And, none of us are specifically in charge and no one can get, consequences for doing anything over and over and over again. There's really nothing you can do. So the consequences next election, hopefully that person gets voted out. It's misbehaving like that. So, you could make a policy on bullying and harassment, but it really is unenforceable as a board member. So there's two things going on there. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but as board members, we don't have a policy because it would be unenforceable.
Thank you, John. Bob, would you like? Okay, sorry, it's not time for the crowd to speak right now. Thank you. Bob, would you like to address this question?
My legs getting stiff. It happens. It happens. It's been happening on my cell phone all week by people I don't even know. Some of them were in from the fire group. I disagree with John in that this document that I have in front of me says, for the purpose of this document, the trustees of the Gabriola Fire Protection District, members of the Gabriola Volunteer Firefighter Association, and employees of the Gabriola Fire Protection District shall be collectively known as the department. The trustees are pointed out in here as part of this document from 1968. That the trustees have to adhere to the same things and are responsible the same way. That has not been enforced. The human resource information that is currently being used is archaic. It needs to be brought up to date. These things are current. You know, people can disagree. It's a small town. Here's my small town. Small town with a flat tire, 3 people will help you change your tire. To paint your barn, 3 people will tell you you painted your barn wrong. It's a bell-shaped curve. But there's a time when telling people how they painted the barn crosses over to them saying much more than they should and being hurtful and damaging relationships in neighborhoods. And then here, the volunteers. The volunteers, from what I have been told, have no way to have, I will stop in there. We need to move on, improve the human relation rules and dialogue and have policy that we all respect.
Thank you. Doug, over to you. Would you like to respond to this question with the help of your vote?
Sure. Can you just briefly repeat the question? Sorry.
It's about human relations and policies that set standard and oversight for zoning.
Well, I think many of the members here have made an attempt to say that there is one, and I do believe there is one. The spirit of human relations and anti-bullying policies and harassment. I think the bones are there. Are they being adhered to? It's hard to say. I don't have any context for that. All I can do is reference the report here. The report does recommend an HR resource officer or position to be implemented for the department and the board to resolve some of this conflict and to have a clear path forward to have some kind of restorative justice, reconciliation, whatever it may be, for the matter or issue at hand. It also alludes to, there's a liability to the board if this is not addressed. I mean, aside from the financial responsibility and the fiduciary responsibility of the board, it's the right thing to do for the community. I mean, nobody likes bullying in a community. Nobody likes when it happens to yourself, to your son, to your wife, to your friends, to your community. So to me, it goes hand in hand. One of those essential services, human resources and human relations within the board and the fire department need to be aligned, and the policy needs to be updated, and it needs to be robust.
For the last word on this topic, we'll go to Diana.
It's always tough when we get into this area because those of us that are on the board are also under a very strong confidentiality agreement. We can't talk about a lot of things. We can't speak to some things that are before us. We can't talk about things that have gone on in the past because they deserve the respect of the confidentiality that went on behind closed doors. So if something is happening, something is in process, we can't talk about it any more than I can talk about stuff that goes on in the school, any more than we can talk about anything that goes on in the clinic. So it puts us in a really hard place sometimes to talk about stuff like that. There are 2 different areas, as has been spoken. The problem with the trustees is we do not have enforcement. We can have whatever we want on paper. There is no ability to enforce other than possibly sanction. What we have for employees is we are the boss of an employer, and it says here, and this is in Jay Brownlee's thing. It should also be noted that as the authority having jurisdiction, we are considered to be the employer, and for the purposes of authority under the aspects of the BC Human Rights Code, BC Labor Code, Employment Standards, BC Act, and the Workers' Compensation Act, as they relate to provisions for workers in the workplace. Accordingly, it is important that we, as board members, fully understand their fiduciary duties and obligations as local government. All of those acts apply to how we deal with stuff, and they're very dense and they're very complicated. So we are in the process of trying to figure out how those all interrelate and how we're supposed to interface those with our employees and not step on to operations at the same time, since those people are part of operations. So we have a real tight rope that we're trying to walk, and we're trying to be really fair and be on top of everything. There's also a concept of reciprocity, which means if you like somebody, you don't have a problem with something they're saying, but if you don't like somebody, everything that's said and done is filtered through that as well. So we try to be very careful.
Okay. I just want to close by thanking everyone for coming out here tonight and appreciate your decorum. And really big thank you to all the candidates for making the time to answer the very good questions. We apologize we couldn't get to all of them, but just go out and vote. That's what you can do.
Yes.